This happened in 2001 on Halloween night to be specific. I was 7. If you want to know my current age, do the math. My mom helped me remember this one. So, if there are any further questions, I will ask her as she remembers the night vividly. It was freezing, probably within the 20-30 degree range. I was hell-bent on going out anyway. I wanted my pillowcase to be stocked full of sweets. I dressed as a cat. Not too hard to imagine that. Now, at the time, I had zero idea, but my rockstar mom was on it, and you can thank her for her on-par memory. My mom noticed a very tall man dressed in all black. My mom said he had black jeans on, black trench coat, and a black hockey mask. He had no kids with him, so that was a huge red flag to my mom. But he did have a pumpkin basket to put candy in. This will be important later. He followed us around, house to house, always stayed back 3 or 4 houses according to Mom. After 20 or so minutes, she shrugged it off, thinking this was some really tall kid just innocently out trick-or-treating. But the more she shrugged it off, the more uneasy she felt. Now I do remember my pillowcase was only half full and my mom hurrying us home and me being super pouty about it. I do not, however, remember Mom putting the house on lockdown after we got in the front door, but she remembers and she said she did it very quickly. I ate some candy, brushed my teeth, got into bed. Mom laid down next to me. I remember this and thought it was a little weird since I was sleeping on my own at 7. Now this is where my mom really helped me out with this story, as I had no idea until we talked about it earlier. Fast forward to the morning. There was a pumpkin basket full of candy with a note on top that said meow and chicken scratch on our front porch right outside the front door. My mom threw out the candy in case it was tampered with and she burned up the note. Now, what creeps me out, and I just found out from my mom earlier, is that in the middle of the night, she got up from my bed to recheck the house, looked out the window and saw him in our front lawn, staring at the house with the pumpkin basket in his hand. She didn't think he noticed her. She called the police. Immediately, she briefed the officer on what happened. The officer said he'd do a few rounds and patrol the area. My mom never heard back from the officer that night, or ever, she said. Mom also told me she stayed up the entire night with a pistol in her lap after seeing him in the front yard. Since that night, and up until right now, nothing weird has happened since. But as for his intentions, zero idea. When I was younger, we frequently visited my grandparents around holidays, even though we didn't live in the same town. My aunt lives 2 houses down from my grandparents. The lady in the house in between was creepy. She was a large woman, over 6 feet. She wore logging chains around her neck, a dress, and work boots. The only time I remember seeing her outside was either in her garden, in the back, or when she was washing outside of her house, scrubbing the actual building. She did this often. During these times, she would yell at us kids and call us all kinds of things. She would tell us the devil would be coming for us. The adults told us to leave her alone and to avoid her. We would run the distance between my aunts and my grandparents just because when you passed by, she was watching out the windows. It was creepy, and we never went alone. One Halloween, one of the cousins dared us to trick-or-treat her house. I remember how scared I was, but I didn't want to be a chicken. Plus, I was going with the group. One of us rang the doorbell, and there was a lot of banging noises in the house, suddenly like doors slamming. When she answered the door, she had a severed head in her hands, and we all went screaming. The adults told us it was just a Halloween prop, and we knew we shouldn't be bothering her and deserved to be scared. About a month later, my parents got a phone call that the lady had tried to kill my aunt, while she was bringing in groceries and had my young cousin in her arms. The lady had one of them rope saws and had come up behind my aunt with it. She put it over her head and around her neck and proceeded to saw. My aunt naturally flipped and started kicking the door. My uncle came and beat the lady down with a fire poker. The police investigation revealed that the woman had been digging tunnels under her home which were coming up under my aunt's, my grandparents', and another neighbor's house. She had been bringing the dirt up and putting it in the raised beds of the gardens. She also had a shrine of some sort of underground which had a few severed heads around it. My aunt survived, but she has a long scar across her neck. When I was in high school, the drama department set up a haunted house for Halloween. It was generally pretty mediocre. For a play that they had recently done, they had set up a cable hanging from the stage ceiling to which you could wear a harness and hang there. To the cable was attached a fake noose for a scene in which somebody was hung in the play. Only fake in that it didn't cinch up when you put weight on it, but it also didn't have any give. Basically, as long as the harness held you up, the noose fell loose around your neck. Really? A stupid idea in retrospect. Naturally, this was implemented into the haunted house, and I volunteered to play a hanging trick-or-treater. I wore a dinosaur outfit and a mask and held a bag of candy and pretended to be dead and hang there. At one point, I took a break as the harness was riding up in no-no places, and while I was gone, some assholes took the liberty of grabbing the noose and swinging around the stage from it. This somehow tightened the noose without my knowing, and when I returned, I put the mask on, stepped up the ladder, connected my harness, and put the noose around my neck and let myself hang. The noose tightened around my neck, cutting off circulation and air, and I immediately began to black out. I felt myself falling asleep comfortably, and only after a few seconds did it occur to me what was happening. I suddenly remembered that I was hanging there and blindly reached out for the ladder. I pulled myself onto it and relieved the pressure on my throat. My nerves were going nuts and I was shaking and my head hurt, so I stood there for a moment, took off the noose and harness, and walked away. I'm certain I could have easily hung myself accidentally then and there, and it's clear what would have resulted. Every year, new students would recount the legend of one drama student that hung there for hours in the school's haunted house, while families paraded past him unaware that the dead trick-or-treater they were oogling at was actually dead. He was only to be discovered by his poor girlfriend at the end of the night. Despite the consistent denial by faculty, the legend would persist. With the recent Mortal Kombat X DLC including Jason Voorhees, it got me thinking recently about this one encounter I had with someone on Halloween when I was 14 years old. I was around that time in my life where most kids my age would stop trick-or-treating, either because they thought it was lame or because their parents told them to stop. Me and my father had a similar conversation, and in the end, we decided that this trick-or-treat would be my final one. So when October 31st came, my dad helped me paint my face to look like a zombie. I figured that this costume should be simple, yet something I liked, so zombie it was. I grabbed an empty pillowcase and headed out, with my parents telling me to be back by 11-ish. So before you ask, yes, I was going trick-or-treating by myself. I was able to convince my parents that I needed to get as much candy as I could, seeing as how I wouldn't be able to do this again next year. So off I went, running from house to house, shoving candy into my pillowcase as fast as I could. So by the time it got dark, my pillowcase is about 3/4 filled, and I had no intent on slowing down. As I'm about to walk into a new neighborhood, a black van pulls up to the curb that was about a few feet away from me. The door opens, and out of the darkness comes some guy in a hockey mask and a tattered jacket, wielding a machete. He turns his head towards me, probably just trying to creep me out. Nice Jason costume, I say, trying to be friendly as I begin to walk past him. Thanks, zombie. You want some candy? I've got bags of them, he says as he pulls out these little white sacks of candy. So I, being the idiot 14-year-old I was, opened my pillowcase and let him plop 2 or 3 sacks into it. Make sure you eat them real soon. You'll love them, he snickered, which really sent a chill down my spine. He left as quickly as he came, but I just shrugged it off as I needed to finish trick-or-treating. I continued down the road, again, going from house to house for candy. After about the 3rd or 4th house, I noticed something odd. It was the same black van from before. After every house I went to, the van would get closer and closer. At around what I could only guess was 10:30, I headed home with my sack full to bursting. As I walked around the area behind me illuminated, I turned around, expecting to see a car that would soon pass me. It was the van, and in the driver's seat was the same Jason Voorhees who gave me the candy. My heart stopped, and I broke into a mad dash back to my house, the van easily keeping up with me. I was luckily able to lose him by running into the woods near my house. I exited the woods that led to the side of my house and looked for the fake rock that held the spare key to our house. After I got in, I put my candy on the kitchen table and somehow found a way to go to sleep. The next morning, when I woke up, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table digging through the bags of candy that Jason gave me. They started asking where and who I got the bags from, which started to freak me out. I would later learn that the bags of candy were nothing more than just bags of prescription drugs. There was a ton of sleeping pills in them, and I finally understood his intentions. He was going to follow me until I fell asleep, then do God knows what with me after he got me in the van. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure whether or not that machete was fake or not. The police came up empty-handed, so I guess I'll never know his fate. If you're reading this, Jason, let's not meet again.